Everyone to this session on graphic novels and comics. Please, if you have a cell phone, put it on silent or vibrate. The festival would like you to fill out your commentary cards at the end of the session, and there are pencils on the table out there if you didn't already get one, and you can drop those off at that point. One of our presentations, just a little short point where someone's going to read from some of his comics, has some adult language. I should warn you ahead of time. So when the tall guy gets up, you should know that's when that's coming. So let me tell you a little bit about our panel. Peter Kuper is the co-founder of the political graphics magazine World War III Illustrated, which is in its 31st year of publication. He has written and drawn Spy vs. Spy in every issue of Mad magazine since 1997. Kuper produced over 20 books, including The System, Sticks and Stones, Diario de Laca, and an adaptation of Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis. He has been teaching comics courses for over 25 years in New York and is a visiting professor at Harvard University. Mr. Kuper is sponsored by Henderson State University. David Rees first came to fame as the author of Get Your War On, a Bush-era comic strip composed from clip art that he faxed to friends. It was eventually serialized by Rolling Stone magazine, collected into 3 successful books, and turned into an off-Broadway play. He is also the author of the workplace satire, My New Filing Technique is Unstoppable. He lives in Beacon, New York. His new work is How to Sharpen Pencils, a practical and theoretical treatise on the artisanal craft of pencil sharpening. And he has a session later today, I believe, which he'll be talking more about that book. Barbara Slate's You Can Do a Graphic Novel is used at all levels of classroom education. Her first cartoon character, Miss Liz, appeared on millions of green cards in a regular comic strip in Cosmopolitan magazine, and as a star in a series of animated segments on NBC's Today Show. Slate created Angel Love for DC Comics, wrote and drew Yuppies from Hell and Sweet 16 for Marvel, and put her own spin on Disney classics Beauty and the Beast and Pocahontas, as well as Mattel's Barbie. She has written over 100 Betty and Veronica stories for Archie Comics. Her art has been exhibited in many galleries, reviewed by the New York Times, and profiled in A Century of Women Cartoonists. She is currently busy being a mom, doing a graphic novel entitled Getting Married and Other Mistakes, and teaching teens to create graphic novels. And she has a session later today, I think at noon, where she's going to focus more on her book that helps teach how to do a graphic novel. Lila Quintero Weaver was born in Argentina. She grew up in Alabama in an immigrant family that encouraged her artistic interests. She holds a degree from the University of Alabama, and the graphic novel Darkroom, a memoir in black and white, is her first published work. I'm going to open up a presentation here for Peter Kuper and hand over to him to give you a little bit of a brief background on kind of what he does and show you some images that we can refer to later in our discussions. Peter, if you'd like to come.
Thank you for coming. So I thought I'd show a couple of influences. Early one being Mad magazine. The thing that struck me about Mad was you just never knew which direction they were going to go, and that even the fact that they called the artists the usual gang of idiots always impressed me. Then came the underground comics. I also was a superhero comic reader in the 60s and 70s. By the time I was ready to get into comics, that had pretty much gone away. But in the meantime, they were a big influence on the kind of things that interested me. Even though they had the sex and drugs aspect of it, they also had politics in there. This is another big influence. I don't know if you don't remember Ronald Reagan. He may not remember either. He promises a less bureaucratic shadow government. This influenced me and my friend to start a magazine when we were in art school called World War III Illustrated, because the idea that somebody like Ronald Reagan was going to end up in the Cold War going up against Brezhnev, and the the vibe in the country at that time was definitely headed towards war. And so we started talking about these sort of world issues, but very quickly realized that what we were talking about, we were just reading about in the papers. And so we started talking about things that were closer to home, like what was going on our block in Manhattan. And it kept on being, there kept on being issues, unfortunately, to talk about, and more people joined us in the process of doing the magazine. And so over the years now, we're now in our, I think, even 32nd year. We keep doing new issues and addressing what's going on, and continuing the idea of alternative media. This also gave me an opportunity to work with other people in kind of a community situation where I could develop my comics. And when I had the opportunity, I did an adaptation of Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, and I wanted to demonstrate different ways that you could do comics, and for that matter, my general interest in the form and how it could be used, and not only stylistically directions that you could go, but also most particularly the subject matter. And I certainly found that the personal was political as well, and there's a little view of my brain. And I got the opportunity to work with DC Comics. They asked me if I had a project, and I presented this. I thought I had a very long story, but I decided I would do it as a wordless story because most people think comics are supposed to have word balloons, they're supposed to have panel borders, they're supposed to be done in pen and ink style, and I decided to try to throw much of that out and then tell a story that was about interconnected lives and how, and life in New York and a combination of things. Mad Magazine saw that I was doing this wordless comic, and it just happened that they were about to change up artists because the creator of Spy vs. Spy was retiring. And I'm really interested in general in the language of comics even, the idea that a sawing log represents snoring, or in this case, a weapon. And you have those painting stars, which, if properly applied, can be throwing stars. And if you get in trouble, you can always use your word balloon too. And the symbol, this is the kind of thing, cartoonists came up with these images, and I'm just utilizing them. And so the light bulb is an idea. I have an idea, and the idea is that I will throw my light bulb at you. And if all else fails, move the panel border. I also did an adaptation of Kafka's Metamorphosis, and this was another opportunity to bring audience who didn't necessarily read comics to the forum because they might know Metamorphosis, but then the idea of what you could do with comics in that was not necessarily something that people would have seen. And I thought it worked well. The humor that's in Kafka, even as dark as it is, came through, I think, in using this medium. Now, right outside of Gregor Samsa's window on September 11th was, well, from my studio, I could see the smoke rising from the Twin Towers. And this was a point where I was both, I wished that comics could do more, but I was also relieved that we had a publication that we were doing that wasn't dependent on mainstream media. And it was really a point, though, where I wish art could do more. I felt like I was trying to tell these stories and have some impact, and there was nothing I could do to stop what happened. But curiously, my daughter's art came to my rescue in a certain way, because I'd come home at the end of the day, and then we would sit and draw together, and I could forget about the woes of the world and get in her world. This is the cover of the issue that we did right before we went into Iraq, and we talked about the fact that we thought it was a bad idea. Not that that stopped anything from happening, but that was a time when we could not, in mainstream media, you could not talk about these things. And at that point, people like Art Spiegelman, who did Mouse, were finding their way to World War III to get published. And so he did a book called In the Shadow of No Towers, which first was running in World War III. This gave me the opportunity also to go back to my roots. One of my first jobs was inking Richie Rich, and I did this parody for that. I got very tired after years and years of doing things about Bush, and I wanted to talk in a broader sense about what it meant to, power and where it came from. And so I thought, like, where does somebody like a president like that come from? And I thought maybe he gets spit out of a volcano and he self-actualizes. And for some crazy reason, we give him power, and he's more than happy to take it. It ends up being kind of a biblical story, and things don't end well for our anti-hero. So after the second election, as it were, a discussion I was having with my wife about taking a sabbatical and moving to another place for a little bit seemed to be appropriate. We picked this town called Oaxaca in Mexico, and I thought it would be an opportunity to get exposure to other kinds of art. Those are radishes that people carve. And we first arrived there, and I noticed there's a lot of graffiti on the wall, and I had not done my homework. And is that 2 minutes or 2 seconds? I did not speak Spanish much at the time, but the taxi driver suggested there was something with the governor, and I learned very quickly that there was a teacher strike that was going on there. But it had been going on every year for the last 25 years. They'd have this teacher strike. It would last a couple of weeks. They'd go home. It was a pity, though. I really wish that I could read what the people were writing on the streets. Actually, I could read that. Truth be known, we never got anything but a warm welcome when we were there. And I did have the opportunity to draw things that weren't just political. But very quickly, I started noting this teacher strike and seeing what was going on with it and applying my art, once again, in that direction. And when an American journalist was killed down there, along with many, many other locals, federal troops were sent in. Some very enterprising women wrote murderers on their shields, and I kept waiting for them to rearrange the shield so it would say, like, "Have a nice day." But just the idea that somebody come up and write, I have an image of the two women that were doing it. There's my wife walking around one of the barricades, and they had written murderers on the floor there. So I discovered very quickly, there's my daughter. I asked, I said, "Okay, yes, go ahead." And I found myself turning towards doing images about the strike. I also got to see how art was applied, and this is from Day of the Dead. Everybody seems to be an artist there, and it's not exclusive to artists versus the viewing public. And this is some of the art that they used during the strike. And there was like a dialogue going on. You'd see that there's people kind of talking to each other, and then the government also talking back. That was their response. And this just made me want to use my art once again and to kind of send messages. And I sent it to publications around the world and illustrated things like an article about the journalist who'd been killed. This is the drawing I did the day it turned out was the end of the strike. And I walked away, and moments later, the police attacked, and I finished the drawing back at home looking at photos on the internet. And this is a piece I did for World War III. So I came back from there. I'm still processing what happened, even though it's about 3 or so years ago. But I did realize just how small the world is and how connected we all are, and what happens in Mexico or in the Arctic happens in Manhattan. And that it's one round world. And do I worry? Well, yes. But these leaders turn to dust and are replaced by new leaders with new problems. And you can't help but realize that our leaders are only going to get us so far, and it's going to be very much in our hands to figure out what we're going to do to repair the various damage that has been done. And but alongside that, as history has been a lesson, there's art there that will be part of the charge and part of the flag that people can hold. And that although that says that the revolution will not be televised, I do believe that it will be illustrated. Thank you.
Now this is going to be the adult portion of our program for just a couple of minutes, so if anyone feels like they might be uncomfortable with that. But in addition to making comics, David Rees is a performance artist as well, so he kind of has to add to what he's given. And you can't really understand the magnitude of his artistic talent anyway without seeing some of his cartoons projected.
Okay. All right. So these two guys on the front row, we're good? Yeah? F word okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Down here.
Okay. So I grew up making cartoons and drawing and stuff, and then I realized after years and years that I hated the process of penciling the cartoon and then inking it. And also I was a horrible drawer, so I kind of gave it up until I had a temp job. This is years and years ago now, but I had a temp job with nothing to do. I was sitting around goofing with PowerPoint, and I realized that you could just import clip art and build cartoons that way. So I'm proud to say I haven't really drawn a proper cartoon character in 15 years. And I encourage anybody, cartoonist in the audience, to throw away their pens and pencils and just use clip art. Bill Gates already drew everything that you need for entertainment. Cartoons. So the first cartoon that I made using clip art is called My New Fighting Technique is Unstoppable. This is just karate clip art I found. This karate temple sure keeps us busy. God damn. Damn, I love keeping ambulance drivers busy. I haven't seen the inside of an ambulance in a long time. What the fuck? I'd like to show you the inside of an ambulance. I think I'll show the inside of an ambulance to you instead. So what do you think of the inside of our ambulance? Probably the greatest thing I've ever made. It really did help pass the time at this job. Here's another example. It's all the same. And then I moved on to my new filing technique is Unstoppable. When will the 10K 2G files be ready for review? I have no idea what you're talking about. Come on, the 10K 2G files. We need them in order to calculate the F3 index code. Ooh, that sounds cool. Can I help? Hell yes, you can help. Actually, it's your job. Great, I'll use my computer. Oh man, I feel like I'm about to get really sad about what I'm doing with my life. Not me, I have a computer. I mean, it's just silly, okay? I admit that. Did you install the new 23KL filing protocol? I tried, but it didn't work. What the hell? Get it done. Yo, check your vibe. It's too aggro. What's aggro? Why are you always using all these weird words? Oh man, I can't handle all your questions. I gotta lie down. You better get used to my questions, buddy. I have lots of them. Are you interested in having a marijuana smoking contest? So yeah, I was kind of just doing this stuff, and then as Peter mentioned, I was living in New York during the 9/11 attacks, and obviously it was really traumatic and stressful. And I had a lot of I guess I had a lot of pent-up emotion, or just churning emotion and anxieties, obviously, and questions about what was going to happen next. And so one night, all this stuff was weighing heavily on my mind. This was 3 or 4 weeks after the initial attacks. And I kind of felt to be fair, it was a month later, but I was feeling skeptical of this rhetoric of a war on terror. It just sounded really expensive, and it was going to take a really long time. And so I decided to use this stuff, the clip art and the bad language and everything, to make jokes about the war on terror. And so that's what led to this comic that I made called Get Your War On. So this was the first one that I made. It was really simple. Oh yeah, Operation Enduring Freedom is in the house. Oh yeah, Operation Enduring Our Freedom is in the motherfucking house. Yes, Operation Enduring Our Freedom to bomb the living fuck out of you is in the house. Not super subtle, not super literary, not super interesting to look at, but that was kind of the point. I wanted to make something that looked really boring, like those old Rex Morgan MD comics. You know when you're a kid and you're reading the comic pages and they're always these boring soap opera comics for grown-ups, and it's just two people standing around going, yes, Maryworth, I'm going to bring a casserole to your party. Great, I can't wait to see you. Will Brad be there? I hope so. I'm in love with him. And when you're a kid, it's you just want to read Garfield or whatever. So I was trying to make something that was that boring, and then when you would read it, it would have this kind of shocking language. Oh my God, this war on terrorism is going to rule. I can't wait until the war is over and there's no more terrorism. I know, remember when the US had a drug problem and then we declared a war on drugs and now you can't buy drugs anymore? It'll be just like that. Right, God, if only that war on drugs hadn't been so effective, I could really use some fucking marijuana. I realize now that's the second marijuana reference in like a minute. I'm not going to read this, but I just want to show you that I immediately became intoxicated with the power of word balloons. And as the comic went on, I just started like crushing these poor little clip art characters with my rants. So blah, 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 all that stuff. Okay. Then I started making a comic for women called Relationships, made for the modern woman, because I know how women, what they want. It's primal, authentic, and emotional, and many famous people like it. This was also a chance for me to show off my skills at drawing geometric shapes. Basically, this was a comic about relationships from the point of view of some badass geometric shapes. Her, did you remember to buy tickets to the big flower arrangement convention? Him, ooh. Says it all, ladies. It's a great dress, forget I said anything. Don't lie to me, screw you for hating how I look. This is the best one I ever made. Him, I'm chilling on the sofa. I made some promotional posters. Why do you wash my fancy bras in hot water? They're supposed to be washed in cold water. I don't know. I'm depressed. A lot of people were confused by this comic, including myself. But that's one of the pleasures of cartooning, is you can confuse yourself. And speaking of things that confuse people, this is my latest venture, which isn't really cartoon related, but I wanted to point it out because my friend made this nice woodcut for my new business of sharpening people's pencils. Thanks, guys.
You can learn more about that pencil sharpening later. I'll just put an image up. I don't know if you have any specific images you wanted to show or refer to. I know we have some books you brought also.
Okay, you know what, I'll go quickly because anybody who's coming to my session at 12 won't have to hear this twice. So when I moved to upstate New York, which way do I go?
Just hit the space bar.
Okay.
That's the best part.
Okay. When I moved to upstate New York, I started writing my Getting Married and Other Mistakes. And I was sitting at my drawing board forever, and it just really was going nowhere. It took me 14 years before I got this book published. And it's coming out June 2012. So I was sitting at my drawing board and the phone rang, and it was a librarian asking me if I was interested in teaching teens how to do graphic novels. And it sounded like a great way of getting out of the house. So I said yes, and I said, make sure you cap it at 15, because I wanted to give special attention to the kids. And the librarian laughed at me and said, if we get 3 teens in our library, it will be a miracle. And it was a miracle. We got 15 teens in the library. I had a wonderful class. And basically, I started writing this book because the kids actually taught me how their process worked and how they wanted to do the graphic novel. So, where do I go here? And what it is, it's the adventures of you. Because everybody on this planet is different. Everybody has their own voice. So find your voice. It's always inside of you. Get to know your process. This, when I was working for Marvel Comics, I had 3 books every month to do. And I realized that my process was that one day a month, my brain just left the studio. There it goes, I'm so out of here. And I'm saying, hey, where do you think you're going? So I learned that part of my process was giving myself that one day of going roller skating, getting out of the studio. So get to know your process and then trust it. Write what you know about. When I was 20, I hopped on the Greyhound bus and came to New York City like many other adventurous girls. But I remember that moment of terror and excitement. And so I can go into that moment in that bus and absolutely write volumes about the feeling that it was for me on the bus. So write what you know about it. And my first comic book was Angel Love for DC Comics. And this was obviously a girl coming to New York City. discovering that life is not all that, well, it's kind of adventurous. Angel Love is kind of me, but much more interesting, I would say. And everybody can draw. Stick figures are very exciting. Sometimes stick figures really have the most personality. If you can't get started, doodle. You know what, I'm just going to go quickly because is everybody coming to my session at 12?
You should.
You're not? Okay, I'll just go very quickly. Draw your characters from front, back, side, and sometimes characters pop right off the page. Other times they come in your dreams. And as I said, it's really good to write about the one and only you. The good thing about writing about you is that you're cheap and you're always available. Characters are everywhere. Keep your eyes and ears open. I started doing a comic book called Yuppies from Hell for the Marvel Comics. And what I did is I eavesdropped all over the city. And I got all these amazing conversations. Like, can you imagine a guy saying, I think my relationship with what's her name is really getting serious? I mean, he doesn't even know her name. And so from that, I got a character that I wrote. His name was Joe. And you can see him running in the park. And that was 3 issues with this main guy. And of course, his relationship was with Julie, who all she wants is absolute commitment. So you can see the conflict there. And that guy at the bottom right was my psychiatrist, Dr. Dan. You can see he's got his bedroom slippers on. Well, actually, not in that one, but that was I actually base a lot of my characters on real people, because if you have a go-to person and you can get right inside that person's head, it really helps. And this is a plot. This is the Angel Love Bible. And the Bible is everything you need to know about your character and more. The name, parents, sister, childhood, their biggest fear, favorite color. So you actually need to get to know your character better than you know yourself, which for some people is not that difficult. Okay. And here, nobody likes a boring story. Here are ways you can tell that you're telling a boring story. Ask yourself, would I be excited to read my story? Another way is, if nobody gets your story, it's probably boring. And the third way is, if your mother and girlfriend both love it, it's probably boring. So this is a beginning, middle, end, and twist, which is a guy who can lift the Empire State Building, fly around Earth, and morph into any form, but the only thing he really wants is to be normal. So there you have the beginning, middle, end, and twist, and you should be able to tell your story, even if it's 1,000 pages long, you should be able to tell the beginning, middle, end, and twist in 3 to 5 sentences. Okay, the plot line shows you evolutions. All its twists and turns, highs and lows, plots and subplots. And this is the plot line. When I did Angel Love, it took me, I guess about 10 times going in, trying to figure out what my plot line was. And finally, they sat me down and told me how to plot. And actually, I have some pamphlets I can pass out because it's so important to learn how to plot. And this is all color-coded, where you put your main plot line on the top and all your subplots on the bottom. And if you've ever picked up a comic book from Marvel or DC in the 5th issue, and you don't know what the heck is going on, that's because all the subplots have taken over and there's no main plot. And usually what happens is you put that comic down. So every comic, every story has to have a beginning, middle, end, and twist. So this is when I was a kid. I was the girl who could draw, and my art teacher, Mr. Firestone, gave us all sketchbooks. So we had like a 3-month period of time to fill the sketchbooks, and in those books I put in all perfect drawings of comics, and I copied them from everywhere. And I thought I'd get an A+, but I got the C- scribbled across my pictures. And my art teacher said, draw from life. And that was one of the most exciting things. And I realized that what happens is, pretend you came from Mars, and that you're seeing things as if for the first time. See a tree as if for the first time. See a dog as if for and look at yourself as if for the first time. What happens is you draw what you see, not what you think you see. Because when we get older, we have these ideas and pictures in our mind of what a house looks like, what a dog looks like, what everything looks like, so you don't really look. And when you really look and see what something looks like, it's a completely different drawing. So should we just, okay.
A quick public service announcement before I move to the next part. Someone had asked me about development credit. Many of you are public school teachers and wanting professional development credit. Actually, Barbara's 12 o'clock session on the 4th floor, I think, would be an excellent one for that. She probably wouldn't mind signing if people have certificates or something they need signed at that point, because she's going to have some resources for teachers and those sorts of things.
I actually have some teacher's guides that will teach the kids how to do graphic novels through the book. So any teachers here, I'd love to do that.
So I thought we could just throw out some questions and then turn it over to the audience after a little while. But I wanted to ask Lila a little bit about her book. She is actually sitting in front of her graphic novel, and yours is very autobiographical. You're the main character for that. Why the graphic novel format for that rather than just a prose story? What led you to that decision? And do you think it was a good decision? Do you think there's something that was gained doing it as a graphic novel?
Well, the reason that it was a graphic novel instead of a memoir, and text-only memoir, is because, frankly, I think that it would not have been nearly as interesting. I had a story to tell about being an immigrant child in Alabama in the 1960s, with a lot of the components of the civil rights movement, because my family lived in the heart of the Black Belt region of Alabama, which is most famous for the things that happened in Selma. We lived in a small town about 30 miles away, where there were also some significant events that occurred. And a lot has been written about the civil rights movement, but not much from the point of view of an immigrant, because really in that region, there are not a lot of immigrants. Even to this day, I think it's the case. So we had a unique point of view, and because of the fact that I do have a drawing background, it was just a natural vehicle for me to express what was in my heart to say, the story that I had to tell, and obviously people were more interested in it, frankly. Not just my point of view as a Hispanic in a state where in the 1960s being Hispanic was really rare. So, that's
well, I've got a few questions I'm going to just throw out to the panel in general, and trying to be concise because we want to save time for the audience to ask some more interesting questions than I come up with. But when you're doing autobiographical work, and you're thinking about, how am I coming across in this? What are people going to think of me? If you're a character in it, do you have that thought process, or are you able to get some emotional distance and treat the you in the story as just another character? Anybody want to talk about their experiences with that?
I know if I'm deeply embarrassed that I'm on the right track. So, and I mean, I've finished autobiographical stories and sent them off, and then thought, what have I done? And that, I assume I'm doing something right then.
I base my characters on real people that I know. For instance, my ex-husband is probably going to murder me because I'm doing the book Getting Married and Other Mistakes. It's so close to him, and the character is very close to me. And it took me so long because it was so emotional. I just really delved into all the mistakes I made because I didn't follow my own voice. And so when my publisher called it a biography, I said, no, don't call it a biography, because I did change a lot of it, but I really didn't. I wanted to have an out when people came up and said, that's not me. I said, no, that's not really you.
Anything that you can tell us about that?
Oh, I would never make a comment about this.
He's actually clip art guy number 4.
I was at a conference recently, and a woman who had just bought my book and read it the night before, and she said to me, I know all about you now, and you know nothing about me. And I said, well, that reminds me of the relationship that women have with their gynecologists.
Now, what about the decision about how to draw yourself? Lila and Barbara are fairly attractive in their comics and in real life, but Peter, you're not all that kind to yourself. You're not as bad as Joe Sacco. I don't know if anybody's read Joe Sacco's thing, but he really, even as he drew other people more realistic, he made himself more cartoony and exaggerated. How do you come up with, this is how I'm going to draw myself?
Actually, I just drew myself the way I see myself, and that it's also probably growing up on Mad and the whole usual gang of idiots idea. It's you always do better if you ever try to make yourself look better, you look worse. So I might as well just draw what I see and hope for the best that way.
And Barbara, did you take your own advice and look in the mirror the first time you were going to draw a picture of yourself in a book?
I decided just to go with a cartoon. Anytime somebody says, "Can I have a portrait of you?" I just send a cartoon. Yeah, when I turned 35, I just sent cartoons. That was it. I'm ageless now.
Well, I didn't tell my sister about this. She'll love it.
One of the other things I do is a little exercise, and it's the most extreme navel gazing I could possibly do. Is I keep a sketchbook that's all self-portraits, and I use it kind of like a diary. And I try and do it in different styles, and do it as sometimes it's just an emotional picture, and sometimes it's just making fun of myself, or I try to draw accurately, and all those kind of come together like pixie dust when I have to draw myself in a comic.
Now, what about with family and friends? Do you run things by them as you're doing the work, or do you just kind of hope for the best when they see the finished work? How do you negotiate that?
My biggest critic is my 15-year-old daughter, who comes in and lays it out for me. So I don't even invite her in; she just comes into my studio. So I have a real critic, and of course, editors are wonderful. If you have the opportunity to work with a good editor, there's nothing like a good editor. Send things off, and you can get some real feedback.
I never recall having an editor be very involved in the process, besides maybe my wife saying, "You made me look fat." It's like thin her arm out a little bit or something like that. But I changed the names of most of the characters besides myself, and sometimes even myself. I mean, I consider it more of an autobiography than
So are you the spy or the spy?
I'm the loser.
He wears black more often, so I think he's got a side stick.
It's more graphic.
Yeah. Now, Lila, I know you said your siblings were supportive of the work, but did they kind of see things as you went along, and did you get any feedback from them?
I didn't give them kind of a continuous update, but I interviewed my siblings kind of to refresh my memory on events, to corroborate stories, and also to hear some certain stories that, especially my oldest sister, who's 11 years older than I am, and had actually an eyewitness point of view on certain things that I wrote about. So that was something I felt I really owed to them, and my parents were both deceased, so unfortunately, a lot of data perished with them.
Did you siblings get into any fights, recalling things differently?
No, we kind of, toward the end, I sent everybody an email, and I said, okay, look, pretty soon it's going to come out, and you need to understand certain things about the process of creating a narrative, and that is that you have to oversimplify, you have to streamline, sometimes you have to kind of, make things look slightly different than they actually did, and then I think everybody understood, or at least so far, so good. Nobody has.
That's good. I still don't have the nerve to send my mother the new book. She's not going to like the way she's portrayed.
Now, for those of you who've done cartooning that's more political in nature, by its nature, cartooning simplifies and exaggerates. And is that a problem when you're dealing with complex political issues? I mean, does cartooning have the same problem we say the media has in general, is just glossing over and distorting complex issues, or is there a way to make that work in your favor?
David, you distort complex issues.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question.